Halls of Power: A Diplomat's Journey. Preamble. Amara always felt most at ease among books. Not the flimsy mass-produced paperbacks cluttering the roadside stalls, mind you, but the heavy tomes that lined her father's study, weathered, leather-bound editions with names and concepts that conjured up worlds beyond the confines of her northern Nigerian town, Makurdi. History was her anchor, political tracts her escape. The scent of old paper became the perfume of possibility. The town, nestled amongst sun-bleached savanna and the winding flow of the river Benue, had its own simple rhythms. Women drew water from the well with laughter lilting on their tongues. Craftsmen wove tales of the old gods into ornate fabrics at their looms. But Amara's mother had always maintained that her daughter's spirit was destined for a bolder canvas. "There's thunder in your voice, child," her mother would say, tracing the determined curve of Amara's jawline. It wasn't the boisterous thunder of a storm, but something quieter, a persistent rumble beneath the surface, that drew Professor Oda to his eldest daughter. When the lanky teenager accompanied him to the university in Kano, her mind crackled with the electricity of the debates swirling through dusty lecture halls. "You don't just absorb the words, Amara," her father observed one sweltering afternoon, adjusting his worn spectacles. "You dissect them, wrestle with them. You could build empires with that mind of yours." Empire was a grand word, tinged with colonial shadows, but it lodged in Amara's thoughts. Nigeria, a nation stitched together from disparate peoples, was a study in precarious unity, a tinderbox where ethnicity and religion threatened to spark into violence. Yet, there was undeniable strength in that uneasy mosaic. She envisioned a different kind of empire, built not on conquest, but on the might of understanding, with eloquent diplomacy its guiding principle. Securing a scholarship to Oxford was the key that unlocked the world. The hallowed halls, steeped in tradition and privilege, were a stark contrast to the sun-baked streets of her childhood. Yet, there was a thrill in the challenge. In spirited seminars, her carefully honed arguments found their voice, cutting through the polished accents like a honed blade. The first time she stepped through the doors of the Nigerian embassy in London, a wave of unexpected nostalgia washed over her. The air hummed with familiar cadences, punctuated by the rustle of newspapers printed in her mother tongue. Here, amongst the polished furniture and the framed portraits of past presidents, the clamor of Nigeria was distilled into measured tones and crisp suits. Her diplomatic career began with meticulous tasks, a whirlwind of reports, briefs, and the careful maneuvering of social engagements. It was behind closed doors, where negotiations played out in hushed voices and veiled threats, that she found her footing. Word of the young, eloquent attaché with an unflinching gaze rippled through diplomatic circles. When the opportunity to become Nigeria's ambassador to the UN materialized, Amara stepped into the role not with trepidation, but with a sense of inevitability. This was the empire she would forge, not with brute force, but with the sharp edge of her intellect and a profound understanding of the intricate dance of global politics. The General Assembly Hall, with its rows of seats and buzzing undercurrent of multilingual conversations, felt like both battlefield and stage. Her first address was met with a mix of curiosity and veiled skepticism. A woman, so young, representing a nation often dismissed as a hotbed of chaos. Amara knew the eyes on her were judging more than her words. The cut of her tailored suit, designed from fabric woven by artisans in her home state, carried its own subtle message of strength rooted in tradition. When she rose to speak, the rumble in her voice grew into a resonant force that commanded the room. Her words sliced through the polite veneer of diplomacy. She spoke of the untapped potential of her nation, the silenced voices of women in rural villages, and the simmering unrest fueled by corruption. She also spoke of resilience, of the unyielding spirit that bound her people together despite their differences. The applause, when it came, was hesitant at first, then swelled into a wave that washed over her. She had not won hearts and minds that day, not completely. But she had earned their attention. The halls of power would never be the same. Part 1. The Ascent. Chapter 1. A humble beginning in the town of Makurdi, nestled within the verdant landscapes of Benue State, Nigeria. Amara Oda was already awake before the sun began its slow climb above the horizon. The modest brick house she shared with her parents and two younger siblings hummed with the morning's early chores. Amara's mother, Abeni, moved quietly around the cramped kitchen, preparing the day's first meal of akara and pap, the aroma mingling with the crisp morning air. Amara sat at the rickety wooden table, her eyes tracing the lines of an old geography book, a borrowed treasure that she treated like sacred scripture. Her fascination with the world beyond her town's boundaries grew with every page she turned. Maps of distant lands and photographs of towering buildings sparked dreams in Amara's mind, dreams of speaking in halls of power, her voice carrying weight in decisions that reached far beyond the red dirt of McCurdy. "Amara, make sure Kemi is ready for school," her mother's voice cut through her reverie, gentle yet firm. "Yes, Ma," Amara responded, snapping the book shut. She turned to her younger sister, who was struggling with the tie of her school uniform. With practiced hands, Amara fixed the tie, smoothed down Kemi's hair, and sent her off with a playful pat on the back. As she walked to school with Kemi, the path familiar and worn under her feet, Amara's mind wandered to the political complexities she had read about the night before. Nigeria, a country rich in culture and resources, was often depicted in her books as a pawn in international politics, a notion that both angered and inspired her. She dreamed of changing that narrative, of ensuring that her homeland commanded respect on the global stage. The school, a modest building with peeling paint and vibrant children's laughter, was Amara's haven. Here, she was not just a town girl, she was a scholar, a debater, a dreamer. Mr. Adekunle, her history teacher, recognized her brilliance early on. His lessons on Nigeria's colonial past and its struggle for independence were discussions that Amara relished, often staying behind to ask questions that lingered in her mind, questions about power, governance, and justice. "Amara, remember, the world is much bigger than our town, or even our country," Mr. Adekunle would say, his eyes twinkling behind thick glasses. "One day, you could help lead that world." These words were etched into her heart, fueling her ambition with a potent mixture of hope and resolve. After school, instead of heading straight home, Amara visited the local library, a small, one-room building that held more books than most in the town could imagine. Here, she pored over texts about international law, diplomacy, and global economics. It was in these dusty pages that she first encountered the United Nations, an entity that seemed to embody her dreams of global dialogue and peace. Years passed, and Amara's reputation as a dedicated student earned her a scholarship to the prestigious Oxford University, a transition that filled her with both excitement and trepidation. The sprawling UK urban landscape was a stark contrast to her town in Nigeria. She felt dwarfed by the buildings and the fast-paced life, but the flame of her ambition burned only brighter. University life offered her new challenges and opportunities, including participation in Model United Nations conferences, where she skillfully represented her country and honed her diplomatic skills. Her ability to articulate complex international issues caught the attention of her professors, one of whom recommended her for an internship at the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It was a rare opportunity, one that brought her closer to the corridors of power she had always dreamed of. At the ministry, Amara quickly distinguished herself, not only for her intelligence but for her unique perspective shaped by her humble beginnings. As she rose through the ranks, the dream that had started in a small town in Benue State, under the shade of a neem tree with a geography book in her lap, began to crystallize. The path was fraught with challenges, navigating the male-dominated world of politics, confronting stereotypes, and sometimes battling the cynicism of those who doubted the impact one woman could have. But now, standing at the threshold of becoming Nigeria's ambassador to the United Nations, Amara Oda felt the weight of her journey. It was a testament to the power of dreams nurtured in the unlikeliest of places, a power she carried with her as she prepared to step onto the international stage, ready to change the world. Chapter 2. The weight of responsibility. Amara Oda walked through the gleaming corridors of the United Nations headquarters in New York, her steps echoing softly on the polished marble floor. The vast, circular lobby bustled with diplomats, journalists, and dignitaries from across the globe, each moving with a sense of urgency that matched the gravity of the institution. The murals and flags of member countries adorned the walls, a vivid tapestry of the world's diversity and unity under one roof. As she made her way to the assembly hall for her first session, Amara felt the weight of her new role settling on her shoulders. She was not just representing Nigeria, but the hopes and aspirations of millions who sought progress and recognition in the international community. The enormity of this responsibility mingled with a profound sense of pride, she was a testament to what perseverance in the face of adversity could achieve. Inside the assembly hall, the air was thick with the murmur of different languages, a symphony of global voices. Amara found her seat among the Nigerian delegation, her nameplate prominently displayed. She took a moment to soak in the scene: the large, semicircular room, the sea of delegates, the grandeur of the space designed for dialogue and decision-making. Her colleague, Ambassador Akindele, a seasoned diplomat with decades of experience, leaned over and whispered, "Ready to make your mark, Amara?" Amara nodded, her expression composed. "Ready as I'll ever be," she replied, though her heart raced with anticipation. The session began, and the discussion quickly turned to a resolution on sustainable development, a subject close to Amara's heart. When her turn came to speak, she rose, her voice steady and clear. "Ladies and gentlemen, Nigeria recognizes the critical importance of sustainable development, not just as a policy initiative, but as a moral imperative." Her speech was a blend of passion and pragmatism, appealing to both the ideals and the interests of the international community. She spoke of Nigeria's efforts in promoting renewable energy and sustainable agriculture, and how these could serve as models for other developing nations. After the session, she was approached by several delegates, who expressed their admiration for her eloquence and insights. Among them was Elena Vostrikov, a Russian delegate known for her sharp intellect and formidable presence in negotiations. "You speak very convincingly, Ms. Oda. I look forward to seeing what else you bring to the table," Elena remarked with a nod of respect. The rest of the day was a whirlwind of meetings, briefings, and impromptu discussions. Amara navigated each with a growing confidence, driven by a desire to make a meaningful impact. However, the undercurrents of political maneuvering and the complex alliances at the UN were not lost on her. She knew that every word exchanged, whether in the halls or behind closed doors, was a move in a strategic game of diplomacy. Later that evening, Amara called her mother, Abeni, back in Nigeria. The sound of her mother's voice, warm and reassuring, was a balm to the day's intensity. "Amara, my heart swells with pride for you. How was your first day?" Abeni asked. "It was inspiring, Ma. But I can't help feeling like I'm walking a tightrope. The expectations, the politics, it's a lot to balance," Amara confessed. "You carry the dreams of many, my child, but remember, you walk in the light of your own truth and strength. Stay true to who you are, and you will not falter," her mother advised, her words grounding Amara in the values that had brought her this far. The days turned into weeks, and Amara continued to carve out her place at the UN. Her understanding of international diplomacy deepened, and she forged alliances with key figures, always mindful of the larger picture and Nigeria's role within it. Her insights on panels about women's empowerment and economic development in Africa were particularly noted, drawing attention to often overlooked issues. Yet, the real test of her diplomatic acumen came when a crisis erupted in a neighboring African country, threatening regional stability. The UN Security Council convened an emergency meeting, and Amara found herself at the center of a tense debate on intervention strategies. As the discussions unfolded, Amara's resolve was tested. She navigated the intricate dance of diplomacy with a keen sense of purpose, advocating for a resolution that balanced humanitarian aid with respect for national sovereignty. The stakes were high, and the world watched as she championed a course of action that sought to unify, rather than divide. This chapter in her life, her journey from the humble beginnings in Makurdi to the global stage of the United Nations, was marked by the profound realization of her capacity to influence and inspire. Through her voice, Nigeria spoke not just to the powerful, but to the powerless, ensuring that in the halls of power, even the quietest voices could be heard.